Let's talk about podcast marketing. There's a lot of things I've started to learn since we've dived into having an actual podcast for Simply Be Found, which is called the Simply Be Found Huddle. So if you haven't watched it, make sure you watch that. But what I've done is I've dived into how does a podcast work? How do you get that podcast to be recognized on voice search more? How do you get it recognized inside of search? How do you build up how many people are watching you? And when we did this approach, we did it a little bit different than a lot of podcasters. So I like to use RSS.com. I like to use Opius as a tool, which is called Opius Pro. And then I like to use Descript for some light video editing. I record everything inside of StreamYard for most of my podcasts. So what ends up happening is we record that video inside of StreamYard, makes it super simple to share, and breaks everything down. I may record a whole entire piece on how we do that whole piece and how we have our editing process to where it takes less than an hour to be able to turn a whole entire video where it should. And when my team watches this, they're going to probably either tell me, yes, Rob, you're correct, or no, Rob, it has actually taken us a little bit longer. But when I looked at the marketing side of it, I think a lot of podcast hosts and podcast people out there don't really think about the blogging side as much as they should. So I talk inside of the marketing, and you have multiple different pieces. So you have your organic piece down at the very bottom. This is all your directories. This is all your listings. This is all your business information, all that stuff. I treat a podcast the same way to where it has treat it like a business. It has all that information down in the bottom. Then you have your tree trunk, which is your website. So your podcast should have that website in it. And then it has branches on it. So it has a blog, it has social media, it has the sub branches off, like all the different stuff that's there. Well, one thing I'm noticing is that people invite guests into their podcast. So they use a tool usually called like Podmatch or some other type of software like that to where they're trying to go out and find guests to be inside of there. We do the same thing. We're on there. So if you want to be on ours, you go through the Podmatch platform. It goes through, handles everything, and does all the agreements, and boom, we're off to the races. It takes and hands that whole entire piece off. But one thing I notice is that people don't really utilize the guest side as much as they should. So when a guest comes on, the whole entire benefit of that is you get access to their entire network. So when you're doing anything inside of digital marketing, you're looking to be able to gather that market, and you're looking to be able to work with that market more. And you want to be able to branch your connections out to where you get more watch time, you get more exposure about your business when or about your podcast when you're doing it. So I see a lot of I've been on a guest on a lot of podcasts out there, and most of them fail at this. And I even noticed that we're failing at it ourselves as we're doing it. So that's why I decided, oh heck, I'm just going to record a video, and I'm going to record that video for my team to be able to watch and be able to learn from, and also for anybody else who wants to do it. Because if we're running into that problem, I think the other people are. Start doing some research. I noticed a ton of people are not doing the basics to be able to market their podcast. So what I noticed is that, okay, you have a guest that comes on. For one, that guest should be tagged. And it should be an actual tag to, their social media network that's inside of the social media network that you're sharing on. You should have a link back to that podcast person. You should also be linking up and sharing that information with them. So what we do is we're going to create this media folder. It'll have all the shorts listed in it. It'll have everywhere in the schedule that we're going to be able to do it. We'll thank them for doing it, provide them over the graphics, provide them over shorts. Let them go off to the races and do it. Let them share that information, because that's going to then take your information and put it out there even more, and just ask for them to link back to the main source. So inside of the main source, you have several different pieces. You have YouTube podcasts where you can be able to have that shared at, which is a YouTube video. So when that happens, you have, Amazon, you have Apple, you have all Spotify, you have all these different networks. So share which ones that episode is on. So that way they know where to be able to point to and say, hey, share this out. So then that creates that connection piece. Because inside of marketing, you're constantly looking for connections to be able to grow and how things link up, because that's going to get you the most interaction. But the biggest piece that most podcast people are not doing is they're not creating a blog from it. So I talk inside of the business world where you should start with a video, then pull a transcript, get a blog for it, and then also put that video inside of that blog. So at the very top, videos there, You can listen to it. Well, what you should do is, and where we're failing at right now, is you should have that, that whole entire piece at the very top. So what that blog post would look like is you have, the blog title, you have a short summary of what that blog post is, have the video, and then underneath that video, have the guest information and have links to each of the places it goes to. So what should happen is you should have a, icon for Spotify, an icon for Apple Podcasts. You should have an icon for each of the places, but also talk about your guest and give that guest the spotlight. Because if you give that guest the spotlight, that gives them credibility. It gives them a link back to their website, which then creates a backlink, which then is going to help their SEO, which is going to then bring everything together and be like, okay, this company's being talked about. Boom. That way you can share that information and cause that interconnection. Ask them if they'd be willing to write a blog for you as well as a guest and point back to you. That'll also create another backlink and create more stronger stuff, and just link back to that exact blog post to be like, hey, here's the one they did for us. And here's the video they shared. They can also take that embedded video and put it in. You can even take that to the next step and write them one for their website to be talking about it and talking about that piece. That's the beauty of AI and how AI has changed marketing forever. Because everything is connected, everything has its place, everything has a reason for why it's done the way it's done. So you could bring all that information over. But by showcasing and making that guest of your podcast a major part of it, you're going to be able to bring a reputation to yourself. So you have three pillars inside of the world of marketing. You have content, you have authority, you have trust. This gives you content, builds authority, and it builds trust inside of your entire ecosystem, which is going to help you be able to get your podcast more watches, more guests, and it's also going to build your brand and build your business. That's my 2 cents as I'm looking through and looking at everything going on inside of the marketing world and it comes to podcasts. Hopefully this helps somebody. If you have not listened to our podcast, make sure you come visit it at the Simply Be Found Huddle. We're on all of the different networks. Hopefully we'll link to them inside of the description. And if you have not checked us out, our whole entire system for how we work with each of the different networks for voice search and all of that, I'm looking at how to pull the right schema into that podcast piece to be able to even take it to the next level. So watch out for more videos on that as I deep dive into the world of marketing for podcasts. My name is Rob. I'm one of the co-founders here at Simply Be Found. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and we will see you in the next video.